Will you be sharing your screen?
Yes, I think I will introduce myself without the screen and then I will share. Okay.
Okay,
So
welcome.
thank you, Jonathan, and thanks for making it possible to be here today. Yes, I'm Bettina Wiechers, in German Wiechers. Um, I'm a gerontologist by education, so gerontology is a science of aging, and an educationalist. And I'm working in the field of dementia and aging for nearly 30 years now. For 8 years, I was a clinical supervisor in a big nursing home in Germany with 8 different wards, and three of these were for people. These wards were for people with advanced dementia and one for people with severe dementia. So I was the clinical supervisor there. I was doing diagnostics. I teach, supervise the nurses and the staff. And I was in deep contact with a lot of people over a long time. So some of the people we cared for there, I've accompanied for really 8 years. So I was able to get really deep insights into the what I say today, into the state of consciousness of people with dementia. And in in 2008, that was before I became the clinical supervisor, I decided I was in the field for dementia longer than I have been clinical supervisor, and I decided that I need more knowledge, and I did a master in gerontology and wrote my master thesis about an integral concept of dementia. So I really did the work. What Ken Wilber always says, other people have to take the integral methodological pluralism and work it out for special topics. I did this with dementia some years ago. So if anybody is interested, I did a translation of that, and you will find that on my website. I can share the link later if you like. So, but it's not a concept that it gives information for people with dementia or for relatives. It's really dementia concept from with an epistemological and ontological, from an epistemological and ontological interest. So it's pure theoretical work. So, and today I want to share part of my work. So I always recognizing that when I'm talking about dementia from an integral aspects, people are fascinated first, but then most go back. I have the impression that not a lot of people are interested in dementia, even not if it's from an integral perspective. I want to share today a little bit insight in this integral concept that I did first, showing a little bit what I have done there, some results, and then I want to show part of this what I did. Then I did later. I did work in diagnostics of people with dementia with the help of spiral dynamics. And I worked that out. I think I did a presentation about that at the Integral European Conference in 2018. So I will show these two parts today. And next week, this was my idea, showing the evolution of an integral approach. Next week, I will show the research I do today, because my own development, went on together with my research about dementia. So it was a kind of push for my own development, going so deeply into dementia. So, and I will show that next week. Okay, good. I'm always a little bit nervous when I have to speak in English. It's not my mother tongue, obviously. So please be patient with me if I
Doing
don't get
great. Thank you.
good. One moment.
Paul, is share screen enabled?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was a
Okay.
little bit
Never mind.
slow. So I used this wonderful picture for my first screen. So it's about dementia from integral and spiral, as I've told you. And Yes, I would like to start with this quadrant model, the equal model, as Ken Wilber developed it. I think you all know this model, so I don't have to go into the depth of it. Or is anybody? No, I think I can. Everybody knows this model here in this.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
you can
Yeah,
safely assume that.
yeah. Okay, good. So what I want to show you is just some insights in that what I've figured out or found out, what my results were in this from this master thesis, and as you know, we have this four perspectives or dimensions in the quadrant model. In the upper left, I will show you some insights of the interior individual aspects of dementia: the I, upper right, the exterior individual, the it. The lower left is the we, and the lower right is the its, or the it plural of dementia. And what I did in this my master thesis was first just figuring out if you can use the integral approach for doing research about dementia. Is it an holonic aspect, and it is. And then I went through all four quadrants and looked for the different levels of development. So the lines of, not the levels first, the lines of development in all quadrants. And with these lines, I later worked on the levels. And then I went a little bit into typologies and states and so on. I will show today only the lines of development or some lines of development in every quadrant which I found out. So when we go first into the I aspect, the dimension of the interior individual aspects of dementia, we find development. And I think this is important to see. These all are lines of development, so we can see in all these aspects that I have found a development over time. This is the criteria in dementia. So we have, for example, much more, but these are just some aspects. When we go into dementia, we find in this quadrant we find the needs of a person with dementia, and in the needs of a person with dementia we find development over time. The needs are changing. We have three main phases in the development of dementia. We have the early dementia, where people are sometimes are oriented and then are not oriented, so they're changing their state of consciousness, sometimes in just short, in a very short time. Then we have the advanced state of dementia, where people are mostly not oriented any longer, but they're able to walk and to talk. There's often not a lot of sense any longer in that what they're talking, but they are still able to move and to eat on their own and so on. And then we have this stage the stage of severe dementia, where people are mostly, if they still live with this condition, are mostly lying in the bed all of the whole day, and they need care in every part of their lives. So, and then during this process of dementia, the need of a person with dementia, of course, is changing. So we have some significant research about this aspect, and this is one line of development. Then we have also a line of development in dementia about the biography. Of course, the biography is a process. We can watch that. We can write the story, the biography on. So that is something that is changing over time. At the same time, the life story of a person with dementia is changing, and these are two different aspects. The biography is not the same as the life story, because a person with dementia can't tell their own life story at the end any longer. So we have also their development over time. And the memories of a person with dementia is changing over time. So this is another line of development, especially as it is a kind of paradoxical development, because people with dementia in the later stages can't make any new memories any longer, so they're not able to gain new memories, and they're going in the memories that are still available to them. They're going back into their own stories, so they're going more and more back. First, they're perhaps in their 50s with their memories, then their 40s, 30s, 20s, and in their childhood. So there's also a line of development, but it's a paradoxical, or it's, how would you say, there's nobody with German here. Yeah, it's a controversial. It goes in the other direction. So yeah. Then what we also have are moral concepts. You can see a development in the moral concept of a person with dementia. I will show this later with spiral dynamics. It's more, the values are changing, are developing over time. This is, for me, this was a really fascinating thing. The moment where I recognized that I can use spiral dynamics to diagnose and to recognize the values of a person with dementia. Then we have the aspect of spirituality. I'm doing research about that now. I'm not sure how far we can go there. I think we will do this next time. People with dementia, it depends on how religious or how spiritual, what kind of spiritual person or religious understanding they had in their adulthood. It depends on that, but of course they are developing. They are still in a contact for a long time with something, often with some kind of understanding of God, and this ceases also when they're going into the late state of dementia, the severe state of dementia. Stage, not state. Sorry. Then the meaning of life is something what we can where we can do research about. Emotions is a huge topic that is changing the experience of emotion. I don't know if we can say something about that, but of course the expression of emotions and the way the person can deal with trauma. I had several people in the nursing homes where I did the clinical supervision who were deeply traumatized from their experiences during the end of World War II, especially when they were in the flight tracks from now Poland back to Germany. So we had I had several people who experienced as 10, 12, 16-year-old, mostly girls, this flight, and that was really interesting to see their capacities and their way to deal with this trauma. This also is developing over time, and I found this very interesting because often people say, hey, dementia is a good thing because you're forgetting more and more things, and that's totally wrong. So you are not forgetting, but you're losing your capacities to deal with the memories, and this is really, and especially with the trauma, and this is really challenging. So I have, since I could witness that, I'm more and more recommending that we are doing our trauma work in our 50s, 60s, and latest 70s, and don't wait until dementia will get us, because then you are not able any longer to do any trauma work. So if you have questions in between, just for me it's okay if you just interrupt me if there are any questions. So then I will switch to the upper right quadrant. I think these are easy aspects, what is changing and what is developing over time, and so that we can see them as lines of development is the behavior and behavioral changes in a person of dementia. Of course, this is very obvious if you are caring for a person with dementia, that they can't manage or regulate their behavior often very well, especially if we have a person with frontotemporal dementia. This is the most challenging form of dementia on the behavioral level, because they can't regulate their social behavior any longer. Often they're talking very confrontative. They can be sexual, abusive, and so on. That's with frontotemporal dementia. We have a lot of changes there. The communicative skill of a person with dementia, of course, is changing over time. Then we have the biomarkers. That is something where I'm looking very, very, where we should be very cautious about, because about the politics of the WHO. There are tendencies to make biomarkers the main criteria for the diagnosis of dementia, especially Alzheimer's at the moment. That would mean that only if they find biomarkers in your blood or in your cerebrospinal fluid or something, that you can get a diagnosis, dementia diagnosis, only by biomarkers, even if you don't show any symptoms of dementia otherwise. So that's really something where we should be very attentive at the moment with what is happening there. Development is, of course, also the change of development over time is the atrophy of the brain. It goes on at the end. If a person with Alzheimer's disease is dying of dementia, of Alzheimer's, so if really Alzheimer's is the reason for the death, then we have mostly a loss of up to 25% of brain mass. Mobility is changing, the sleep is changing, and of course nutrition and nutritional status. So these were all lines of development I found in the literature. So I went through the literature and in my master thesis and was looking for these lines of developments. In the lower level, in the lower left, in the area of of dementia, we find dementia in relationships, in marriage, in grandparenthood. Or in all these areas we find development over time. These are all challenging aspects. As most of you who have cared for a person with dementia will know, dementia is changing the relationship very much, especially in marriage, but also grandparenthood. That was at that time a quite new topic in the research, that they were looking at how grandparenthood is changing, how it is, especially how it is for the grandchildren and the effects. Then we have a new development, a quite new development over the last 20 years, the self-help groups, dementia activists. They call themselves now dementia advocates. This was something, when I started my research, there were only a few self-help groups. The first one that became very famous was the Scottish Dementia Working Group. That was the first self-help group who really did politics on dementia, and they organized them only on themselves. There were only people with dementia in these self-help groups, because normally it's otherwise in all the Alzheimer groups. Otherwise, it's mostly founded and managed by relatives of people with dementia. And there are now in a lot of countries, there are these dementia working groups who are organizing themselves. And from these groups are really coming more and more dementia activists. They're in the European Union and then the WHO, and so they all have people with dementia, dementia activists, dementia advocates, who are who are work as a kind of consultants for these organizations. And this is a development over time, because so we have more and more people with dementia speaking in public about this this syndrome, and this is also a new development that happened. Then in this we aspect, we have neighborhood dementia sensitive communities, civic engagement. There's a lot. There was a lot of development over the last 20 years, so that it's now really easier for people with dementia to stay longer in their homes, or that they can move in they don't have to move in nursing homes, but can move into neighborhoods or something like that, where there's another awareness of dementia. Then we have this representation of dementia in literature, movies. There are a lot of movies now um, about dementia. We have collective trauma. So these are all lines of development in this lower level, in this lower left level dimension. And then at the last one is the lower right. I like that example because we have a line of development in the nursing home architecture. In Germany, you can identify, there's an article about that, you can identify 6 different generations of nursing home architecture, especially for people with dementia. So I think this is something what you can only find with an integral approach when you look at that. There are so many development in these areas. We have development in diagnostic tools, a lot development in drugs, pharmaceutical research. France stepped out in the payment for the description of dementia drugs some years ago, I think in 2019. A lot of dementia drugs are not paid by the insurances in the health insurances in France now any longer. We have this new drug at the moment, lecanemab. I think I hope I pronounce it correctly, which is really very critical discussed at the moment if it's helpful or not. Then we have development in legal aspects of dementia, in the care economics, in the health insurance, and something what is really, again, very interesting to watch is how the disease catalogs are developing. We had in Germany, we are still using the ICD-10. ICD is the International Classifications of Diseases of the World Health Organization that has a quite different definition of dementia than the ICD-11. In some countries in the world, they are working now with the ICD-11, not in Germany, because I don't know why. It's something about the death criteria, which are not adaptable to the German health insurance system. So we have different criteria, different definitions of dementia in different countries of the world. And then we have the DSM-5 of the American Psychiatric Association. They're working on a new DSM-6 now again. So there's development in all these areas. And if you just now zoom a little bit out and try to become aware of the complexity that only shows up in these a few lines, which I could figure out in my research, in which all is development happening all the time. It is every day. It's something changing, and it shows so wonderfully how complex the situation around this syndrome or disease is. And it, of course, you can take this model for depression or for high blood pressure or whatever. So you can, I think we should use it for every disease. And this was for me one really one helpful insight to really becoming more aware of the complexity of a disease where a lot of people think it's easily to describe. So this was one of my results in this in the thesis. And then just to show, I went deeper into every line and tried to figure out which levels you can identify in every line. So this was the next step in my thesis, what I did. And I also, Barbara?
But I ask a question. You talk about this as a disease. And I guess in my family, my mother had frontal lobe mini strokes and had frontal lobe dementia. Her youngest brother had early onset Alzheimer's, which looked very different. And I think, at least in the US, folks who are on the cutting edge think of this as not one disease. So
Yeah,
have you looked at that at all?
yeah. I'm sorry. I have could have said that in at the beginning. For me, it's dementia is an entity, and we have several forms of dementia: frontotemporal, or vascular, Alzheimer's, Lewy body. So there are several forms of dementia, and of course we have to differentiate between these in the practical work. This was more. For me, this was more an epistemological and ontological approach, and I wanted to see just the differentiation. But of course, there are different types, frontotemporal and Alzheimer's, and in care and in therapy, we have to look onto them in a very different form, especially frontotemporal dementia. This is really different. Does it help, or do you have more to add to that, Barbara? Okay, good.
I popped my mute back on and couldn't get it unmuted. I'm so sorry. No, that's exactly right, Bettina. That's exactly what I would have said about it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you.
But I think it's for me, it was really, I tried to zoom out as much as possible, because I could have done this only for Alzheimer's, or only for frontotemporal, or also for Lewy body dementia. So, but then the perspective would have been too reduced. I wanted to go as far as possible out. This is the reason why I speak about dementia and not about Alzheimer's, not about frontotemporal, not about vascular, because I think it's a kind of syndrome that is very, very special and is very different to all the other other mental health issues. And this was why this is the reason why I really use dementia and not one of the differentiations of the.
And I think in a lot of cases, it's not properly differentiated. So individuals suffering are all, a lot of cases, treated as one big blob,
Yeah,
and not a lot is done. So I think in that aspect, at this stage in our medical ability to deal with it, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, yeah. I think that if I would be if I would be precise, I would say we should differentiate at every level that I've shown, at every line, because you have someone with Alzheimer's, and the next one with Lewy body. Of course, this is the big difference. But at the same time, is the difference is as big as if it's a person that lives in a loving marriage, or alone in a big city with no social network. So there are so many differentiations we have to be aware about, and the form of dementia is, in my understanding, only one.
That
But
makes sense when you get over into the exterior,
yeah,
right? The environment, the medical care that's available, the community, the family. Yeah, unbelievably different
yeah,
circumstances.
yeah, yeah, and also I did a lot of interviews about people with the relatives of people with dementia in the last year, because I'm doing research now about this the phenomenon of the dissolution of the self. This is where I'm looking at now, and we have that in all forms of dementia. And how people are experiencing that and how they are able to deal with that depends from so many other different things, from so many other aspects, not only from the dementia form, but also from the spiritual level, or from how they are used to care for their own needs also. And so it's really, there are a lot of more factors Now I don't find the right words in English. Sorry. Yeah.
Give us the German word. One of us may recognize it if you come to
Um,
that issue.
mm, yeah, I don't get it at the moment. Sorry. Get a little bit lost in my own thoughts at the moment. I think that every aspect of that I've shown here has the same, can have the same Auswirkung. Does anybody know English, German? No, I have to stop here. I get lost. I'm getting lost in that. I just want to add something, because, what I think is really also important from the integral approach, and these are the validity claims. I don't know if you are all know the integral methodological pluralism Ken Wilber developed, and it's especially you can find this in Integral Spirituality, where he writes a lot about the validity claims, and that every quadrant has another validity claim. And I think when we look at dementia, it's also very important that we are aware about in which quadrant are we talking, and which validity claim is important here. And this is on the upper left, it's truthfulness, and on the upper right, it's truth. And this is a big difference. And on the lower left, it's justness, and on the lower right, functional fit. And so being aware about what we are do we talk about a form of dementia, what we just did, Barbara? It's an aspect of the upper right quadrant that's about truth. Is this person diagnosed well? Is the diagnosis correct? Is the drug is an adequate drug, an adequate therapy? That is an aspect of truth. And is the person cared well for? Does she's cared well with her expressions of emotions and her needs? There's an aspect of truthfulness. And does she have the community she needs, and does she live in a community, in a neighborhood where she feels well? Is a question of justness and being accurate in these aspects. That feels also important for me. Oops. That should be in a different way. I thought I would have animated this a little bit better. I will turn now from the upper left quadrant, from the interior individual aspects of dementia. I would like to go a little bit deeper, and these are the zones. This is also an aspect of the integral methodological pluralism. I think you all know that, you have heard about that Ken Wilber later differentiated every quadrant into two zones. And in the upper left quadrant, he differentiated between the zone 1, that's the perspective from the inside of the interior individual of a person, phenomenology or introspection. And then the perspective of structuralism, zone 2, where you look from the outside of the interior individual of a person. And when we use that for dementia, we have two perspectives onto the interior individual aspects of dementia. One is dementia from the inside or from within a person, where we have this I feel, I perceive, it is important to me. So we can get information about zone 1 only from a person with dementia, from no one else. And this is especially a challenge when we are caring for people with severe dementia, where we don't mostly don't get any sentence like I feel, I perceive, it is important for me any longer. So we have to figure out how can we, in my understanding, become a witness so close as possible to the interior, to the zone 1 experience of a person with dementia. This is for me a challenge that we all, especially from in the integral field or in the spiritual field, should discuss. And then there is the other perspective from structuralism. It's dementia inside a person, but perceived from an external perspective. And there you can hear sentences like, inside the observed person I perceive that he, she thinks, feels. I have the impression that it is important to the person being observed that. So becoming aware about these different perspectives, this is of course the same to all the other 4 quadrants also, but I don't want to go into that. It would need some hours longer. And I think, and from here I will go now to spiral dynamics, because I was aware of these 2 perspectives. I had written this master thesis, I did this work about that, I went deeply into that, and then I became the clinical supervisor after I had done this work. And I went into this nursing home where I was caring, or not, I was not caring, I was a supervisor of the caregivers in these nursing homes, but I was able to be for diagnostics with these people with dementia we cared for there very often. So I got, I think, a very close, very intimate impression of or contact of these people. And I want to show you some of my, some of my findings I had with spiral dynamics. So it started one day. It just one case story. We had one old man. We cared for one old man there who lived in this nursing home, I think 6 or 7 years, and he moved from one ward to the other when his dementia became more worse. He had to move to the next ward where we had better possibilities to care for him. And then he was in this one ward where we cared for people with advanced dementia, where it was a closed surrounding so that I can't get lost. And at the beginning, when he moved in, he always sat in the corner on his special place, and whoever tried to come into his direction without his without him being accepted by him was in danger of getting slapped. He really there was a lot of upheaval in the whole group due to that. But he was really defensive to his corner. That was his corner, and he was very defensive. And this went on for, I think, 2 or 3 years. And the years before, he lived in a normal ward where he was just about how to behave correctly, and he was always correcting the other people. So he knew always what was right and what was wrong. Then he moved into this other ward where he was really slapping people when they didn't behave like he wanted. And then suddenly I came to a meeting with the team, and they said, we don't know what happened with him. He doesn't want to sit in his corner any longer. He only wants to sit at the big table between the others. We don't know if something has changed. And this was the moment where I became aware that we could really see his regression from blue in spiral dynamics, blue to red to purple. At the beginning, he was on a normal ward where he was always the one who said how to behave, what was right or wrong. You have to behave like that. So really this bluish, there's just one way to behave right and you are wrong. And then he became more and more aggressive there so that he couldn't stay on this ward any longer. And he came into the special ward where he retreated in his corner, and he was he was the only one who was allowed to decide where to get, and really was slapping with aggression. And he was allowed to be like that at that point. So there was really this, his red face where he, I'm the only one, I'm the chief of this corner, and nobody is allowed to decide what's going on here. And then it took again 2 or 3 years. And suddenly, from one day, nearly from one day to the other, he just wanted to be in his clan. He just wanted to sit among the others and just was not at all interested to sit on his place alone. He was not aggressive any longer, just wanted to be with the others, having one right on the right side, on the left side, and be a part of the group. And this was the first time where I recognized that we really can use spirodynamics for this, for a kind of diagnostics. And then I did some, I tried to make some typical expressions of that. So this is how a person with dementia could frame her experience from inside. So a zone 1 experience when she's or he is on a kind of blue level. So it's something like, something has changed. I know it. I have changed. I'm ashamed. What do others think of me? No, I no longer want to be around people. So these were some things I often observed in people when they were in this bluish phase. Or I prefer to say expert, like in Suzanne Koch-Reuter's model, but blue I think we also we understand here. It's that they experience changes in themselves. They can't express it properly any longer. They know something is wrong with them, or they experience it as something wrong, and there's a lot of shame, fear about social exclusion, and then they ask a lot what the others think of themselves, and then they start to retreat more and more due to the shame they are experiencing. Then something, when people are going into regression more and more, then we can see something that like this reddish behavior and expression in them, and the experience or the perception of dementia from within on the red level could be, what on earth is this? Why are the others so foolish? I'm supposed to have changed. Nonsense! I'm fine. No, never. I'm perfectly fine. Stop it. I'm about to explode with rage. So really something like, ah. And this I have also witnessed several times, people really being more and more enraged, furious, and always projecting everything onto the others. And these were often people where the spouses said, he was such a nice guy, she was such a nice husband, she was such a friendly woman. I don't know what happened with her or him. And we always had this phase into them. And then we had also another change again, some, if they lived long enough. And this is purple. I don't understand. Where am I? Where are these? Who are these people? I'm scared. That person over there looks friendly. And over there, is that mummy? So we have an ongoing regression into really this purple, where they are more and more disoriented in the word, and they don't understand any longer where they are, what the context of the situation is, and they're only looking for friendly looking people, and in the best they find something where they can project their mother, their father, their grandmother feelings onto, and feel cared or feel safe by that. And then I did the same because I had also a lot of experiences with with the relatives of people with dementia, and you can find this in them also. So now it's the other direction. I started red and go up to green. So I experienced a few, not a lot, but a few relatives really on red, who didn't got any, who couldn't understand what was really happening with their relatives or couldn't accept it. So you can perceive dementia from this perspective. So something like, that's crazy, totally crazy. And he's doing that on purpose. Oops, I can't read here everything. I teach him how to behave. So then we have, I think sometimes the most relatives I met in these nursing homes, in this special nursing home, were something on the bluish expert level, who really were more this. It's a burden. It's a burden for us poor relatives. God is. It's got. I can't. It's got punishment. It's got, or it must be God's punishment. And I feel again a shame. Shame is a lot. If you hear shame in this context, it's often, in my understanding, a hint for a bluish level, because he's. I feel shame because of his behavior, and it's really, really embarrassing for me. Then we have the orange. Perspective. This is a huge economic burden for relatives, the healthcare system, and economics worldwide. Economies. I really don't know how to finance this. Surely there must be a cheaper ways. And what about research? Why can't anyone finally find the right pill to treat this? So with relatives on the orange level, there was a lot of discussion about really how to find a better therapy, and a lot of projecting onto the health system, onto research, onto the doctors and the pharmaceutical industry. And then we have this green. It's so terrible to see people suffering. I suffer with them. We must become even more loving, even more empathic, even more helpful in order to accompany these people well and with dignity. And at the beginning, I really thought I'm projecting, or I'm making this up, these findings. But yeah, I haven't done really empirical research about it. But it would be interesting to do that. So I have to look. Yeah. So as a clinical supervisor, I was responsible for also educating and teaching the nurses in this nursing home. And at the beginning, I didn't understood that I tried to teach something what most of the nurses or the caregivers there couldn't understand, because most or the main approach, or the most important approach in the care for people with dementia, is person-centered. And the person-centered approach is a green approach on the green level. So what we need to develop in the nursing homes is the green meme. But mostly we don't have any green caregivers there, at least not in Germany. We are working there with a lot of low qualified people, a lot of not qualified people. And so the biggest challenge in caring for people with dementia from this perspective is developing the green meme. And while I was there, I was responsible for that and thought about how can I do that. And I found some aspects. Yeah. The state of the art in caring for people with dementia is postmodern, humanistic, person-centered green. It's underrepresented, and the center of gravity in this field is blue and orange. So I asked myself, how can we promote green skills for dementia care in the red, blue, or orange meme? In red, in my understanding, there's only one way. If I had caregivers there on a red level, I learned. It took me, I think, 2 or 3 years trying always to teach them greenish, and then one day I understood I have to control them, and I have to teach the other nurses to control them also. And today I would say we can't use people on a red level in the care for people with dementia, because we have to control them all the time. Blue needs guidance. It worked very well. From the moment I understood that they need guidance all the time, and I found ways to do that, it worked so great. It was really wonderful, because they wanted to learn from me, but they didn't have the capacities on green, so I had to find ways to teach them on blue. Orange needs to be informed. If you can inform orange about the greenish approach, they will try to adapt to it. This really works well. Green needs only encouragement, because they're just the few, and there's a lot of frustration. And then there's yellow, and we should find them. Yeah, how to develop the healthy green mean with red was say what they have to do, control often, show consequences, don't give responsible tasks. If they are smart, they will shift, otherwise they will leave. I became really more and more consequent on this level. Blue, explain detailed how to behave and what to say. Give concrete sentences, expressions, show concrete behavior. I wrote cards, little cards, white cards for every patient, every person with dementia we cared for in this ward, and there were 3 or 4 sentences for situations that came nearly every day, and I wrote sentences which could calm the person with dementia down, and the nurses learned them, and they used them only by learning, not because they understood them, but because they learned it, and it worked. I was really, yeah, it was great. Be a model, encourage and comfort if something went wrong, be clear in your expectations, explain faults, and help to improve regularly. Show person-centered skills in the communication with staff. Orange, explain the scientific background of person-centered communication and the effect of skills. Show the correlation between person-centered approach and well-being of people with dementia. Delegate and trust. And green, be a model and encourage. Be present as a colleague, not as a controller. Yeah, now I have just 2 slides. That's more about the integral community. What are the challenges of an integrally informed understanding of dementia? It was beautiful when I did my first presentation about that in the integral field at the Integral European Conference in 2018. I met Terry of Salon. I think you also had her in this salon, and she asked me what I was doing, and she was so encouraging about that, because she said we need that in the integral community. It's important. So this slide is with reference to Terry. What are the challenges of an integrally informed understanding of dementia? The first is become aware of the complexity of dementia. It is more than just a disease. Spread the word about the integral map of dementia. People from the orange or green meme will be interested. This is really my experience. Become aware that dementia is a construct, and at the same time continue the normal necessary work in the field. It doesn't help to sit in the nursing home and say we are talking about a construct. This is something for intellectual discussion. It's important to see dementia as a construct, in my understanding, but we have to do the work at the same time. Strengthen the healthy green meme, and don't despair when mean green meme events occur. They are ultimately a good sign. There's a lot of green meme in the field, a mean green meme, but at least there is green meme. And teaching and encouraging at that point is very helpful. Encourage people who work in the field of dementia to practice more mindfulness practice. And the last point is, why do we need to consider dementia in the integral field? Dementia is a shadow topic for both individuals and communities. It can be a shadow topic for an integrally informed person, especially if their cognitive line is one of their preferred and most significant lines of development. And I have evidence for that. The integral community is aging. There will be, or rather there already are, integrally informed people with dementia. Turquoise consciousness is necessary for non-exclusive actively integrating consciousness to accompany integrally informed people with dementia in the community. We are far away from that. Yeah, questions, rumors. In 2018, I was confronted, before I went to the conference in Hungary, I was confronted with the idea that Ken Wilber could have dementia. And I questioned that, and I think it's obvious that he does not have dementia. He had another disease which changed his abilities for a while, but that's not dementia. So, that's all. I think it was a lot. I hope it was not too much. Jonathan.
That was great. Thank you so much, Bettina. And now we'll go to the discussion part of the salon. If you have a question for Bettina or a comment, please raise your hand. We'll try to keep your comment to 5 minutes or less, and we'll go in the order of the hands raised.
Paul, do you want to stop the recording?
Yeah.